The morning of my surgery, I remember watching the clock. 6:04 a.m. The hospital room was still dim, the sky outside just starting to brighten. My hands trembled slightly as I lay on the bed, fingers curling instinctively to feel for my wedding ring. It was still there, cold, comforting, a little too loose after all the weight I'd lost, but still mine. That ring had stayed with me through 10 years of marriage, through struggles, miscarriages, job losses, birthday breakfasts, and rainy Sunday afternoons. Through it all, one thing never changed: Thomas holding my hand, or so I thought. He stood by the window that morning, arms folded, scrolling through his phone. "Are you sure you'll be okay during the surgery?" I asked. He didn't look up, just muttered, "Yeah, I'll be around." No kiss, no reassuring smile, just a cold nod and silence. The anesthesiologist told me to count backwards. 10, 9, 8. I tried to focus on Thomas's voice, but it wasn't there. I looked around in my mind, trying to summon his image, his warmth, but found only shadows. 7, 6. I remember a strange pressure on my finger. Something slipped off. I told myself it was just a nurse adjusting something. Then darkness. I woke up groggy, dry-mouthed, the fluorescent lights above buzzing like flies. The first thing I did when instinctively I was reach for my left hand. It was bare. My ring was gone. A nurse came in, adjusting my IV. "My ring," I rasped. "Oh," she said kindly. "Your husband asked us to take it off before surgery. He said it might get lost or scratched." That didn't sound like Thomas. He wasn't sentimental, but he knew what that ring meant to me. He'd never touched it before. "Where is he?" I asked. She hesitated. "He stepped out before the procedure. Said he had an urgent call, but he hasn't returned yet." That was 5 hours ago. By the time visiting hours started, Thomas still hadn't come back. I called his phone, straight to voicemail, texted, no response. I asked the front desk if he'd checked in at any time after leaving. They said no. He never came back inside. I thought maybe he'd gone to get food, maybe he needed a breather, maybe something innocent. But my gut said otherwise. My sister Jenna came to visit the next morning. I told her everything: the missing ring, the vanished husband, the silence. Jenna was skeptical. Maybe he just panicked. Surgery freaks some people out. "After 10 years?" I asked. She didn't answer, but later that evening she came back into the room, pale as a sheet. "I went by your house," she said, trembling. "I used the spare key." My heart stopped. "Everything's gone, Emily." "What?" "His stuff, his clothes, his laptop, even the photo albums. Gone. Like he was never there." As soon as I was discharged, Jenna drove me home. She wasn't exaggerating. The closets looked freshly emptied. The drawers were spotless. Even the wedding photo on the nightstand had been replaced. With a cheap scented candle, I went to the safe, the one we shared. The combination didn't work anymore. I tried logging into our joint bank account. Access denied. Everything had been changed, as if I'd been surgically removed from our life, just like my ring. 2 days later, I received a letter from the bank, an account closure notice, initiated the morning of my surgery, signed digitally by both of us, except I never signed anything. The letter had an address linked to the account, a city 3 states away. I checked the name on the forwarding request, Thomas Bryant. Same name, same signature. He was starting over, without me. The house felt colder than before, not because of the weather, but because everything that made it a home was gone. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom for what felt like hours. My hand ran across the bare closet rod where Thomas's shirts used to hang. The scent of his cologne was faint, like a ghost of the man I thought I married. But ghosts don't vanish with your money. I needed answers. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared email, at least what used to be shared. The password had been changed. His backup email, one I didn't recognize. I tried his Facebook, deactivated. Instagram, gone. LinkedIn, vanished. It was like he'd wiped himself clean. That's when I remembered something. Years ago, when we first got married, Thomas used to keep copies of important papers in a locked file box. He said it was for emergencies. Birth certificates, tax returns, random stuff. We hadn't used it in years. But I found it in the garage, covered in dust. The key? Still taped to the bottom of a tool drawer, exactly where I remembered. Inside, I found something I wasn't expecting. 2 folders. One had old tax forms and a copy of our marriage certificate. The second held a lease agreement. My heart dropped. It was for a small condo, not in our city, not even in our state. Signed 6 months ago. Only his name was on it. There was also a receipt from a moving company, dated the day before my surgery, so he'd planned this. He knew exactly when I'd be vulnerable, when I couldn't stop him. Jenna came back later that evening. I showed her the lease. She shook her head in disbelief. Why would he do this, Em? You guys seemed fine. Were we? I thought we were. We argued sometimes, sure. Who doesn't? But I never imagined this. That's when Jenna said something that made my stomach turn. Wait, what about Kelsey? I blinked. Kelsey? His old assistant. The one you said used to call him late at night for work emergencies. I hadn't thought about Kelsey in years. When she left his office, Thomas said it was because she moved away. I didn't ask questions back then. I trusted him. But now, we searched her name, and what popped up made me sit down. It was a baby announcement, a grainy photo, not professional. Just a hospital bed, a pink blanket, and 2 people smiling over a newborn. Kelsey and Thomas holding hands. Caption: Welcome to the world, little angel. Born the same day your daddy took the biggest step of his life. The same day as my surgery. He didn't just leave me, he left me for her. I didn't even think. My hands moved on their own. I dialed his number again. This time, it rang. He picked up. Silence. Then, Emily. That voice, familiar, distant, cold. You left me, I whispered. A sigh. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Then how was it supposed to happen? I snapped. Was I supposed to die? Did you hope the surgery would kill me? No, don't say that, he hissed. I couldn't do it anymore with us. With us? You mean me? He didn't answer. I gave you 10 years, Thomas. 10 years. And you disappeared with everything. My ring, my savings, my future. I had to start over, he muttered. And you couldn't wait until I was conscious to tell me. Click. He hung up. That week I sat across from a lawyer with trembling hands. He looked over the account activity and the lease I brought. He committed identity fraud, the lawyer said calmly. You can press charges. But will I get anything back? He shook his head. Honestly, probably not. If he moved states and shifted the money around fast enough, it's already gone. I felt like a fool, but I wasn't giving up. Back at home, Jenna found it, tucked into a stack of old mail. An envelope, no stamp, no address, just my name on the front in his handwriting. I didn't want to open it, but I did. Inside was one page. Emily, I didn't know how to say goodbye. You were good to me, too good. But I wasn't happy. I haven't been happy in years. Kelsey and I, it just happened. And when she got pregnant, I knew I couldn't live a double life anymore. You deserved honesty. I couldn't give it. I'm sorry for how this ended. You'll be okay. You're stronger, Thomas. I stared at that last line for what felt like an eternity. Not because it was kind, but because he had the audacity to think he was giving me strength while tearing my life apart. The last blow came 2 weeks later. I received a notice from the county records office. Apparently, Thomas had sold our house while I was in surgery. He forged my signature. The sale had gone through the same day I was discharged. The only thing I had left was gone. I stopped opening the curtains. The light felt too bright for a life this dark. Every surface in the house reminded me of him. The drawer he used to keep his cufflinks. The spot on the couch he always claimed. Even the tiny crack in the hallway tile that he always said he'd fix. And now, it was just me. Me and an empty silence that screamed louder than his betrayal ever did. Jenna stayed for a few days, made sure I ate, brought food, brushed my hair when I didn't have the strength to lift my arms. But eventually she had to go back to her life. I was alone with my thoughts and the weight of everything he took. My doctor referred me to a therapist. At first I rolled my eyes. What was talking going to do? But I went anyway. The first session I didn't say a word. The second I cried for 30 minutes straight. By the third I said his name, Thomas. And just like that, the flashbacks began. Not the memories of the betrayal, but the smaller signs, like how he stopped refilling the coffee pot after himself, or how he started sleeping with his phone under his pillow, or how he'd go silent during dinner if I asked how his day was. They weren't red flags at the time. They were whispers, and I'd ignored every single one. I took down every photo of us, not in anger, but because I didn't recognize the woman in them anymore. That woman smiled beside a man who was already halfway out the door. I changed the locks, not because I thought he'd come back, but because it felt like claiming something. My home, my space, my story. For the first time in a long time, it was mine. 3 months later, I received a call. The district attorney's office. My lawyer had filed a motion on my behalf. Fraud, identity theft, illegal property sale. It was a long shot, but they were moving forward with the case. Turns out Thomas had made a few mistakes. He left digital traces, bank transfers, emails, signatures that didn't match. They weren't sure how far they'd get but it was enough for a court summons. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh, but I showed up. He walked into that courtroom like he didn't know me. Same pressed shirt, same smug expression. Except this time, I wasn't the broken one. I was the one holding evidence. The judge read the charges. Thomas shifted in his seat. When they asked him to speak, he said nothing. But his lawyer spoke plenty. Tried to claim I was unstable after surgery, that he was protecting himself from a hostile environment. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I let the evidence speak. The lease, the sale, the withdrawals, the forged signatures, the letter he wrote me, I read aloud in court. The judge didn't look impressed. The final verdict didn't give me everything back, but it gave me enough. Restitution. in order to return the funds stolen, and a permanent mark on his record. He looked at me one last time right before they let him out, and for the first time, he looked afraid. Not of me, of the woman I'd become without him. It was months later. I was at the pharmacy picking up my prescriptions. That's when I saw her. Kelsey. She looked tired, worn out. She was holding a baby carrier with one arm, digging through her bag with the other, and standing behind her. Thomas carrying a box of diapers, avoiding my eyes. We didn't speak. Not then. But Kelsey did look at me, just for a second, and there was no gloating, no pride, just sadness. I realized then, she wasn't the villain, she was just the next one in line. That night I started something new. A journal. Every night I wrote a letter. Not to Thomas, not to Kelsey, to myself. To the woman who survived surgery. Who woke up to betrayal. Who learned how to grieve a living person, to the woman who rebuilt. There's this belief that starting over means you've failed. That if your marriage ends, your dreams collapse, your plans derail, you've messed up. But that's not true. Sometimes starting over is the bravest thing you can do. It means you saw the wreckage and chose to walk away anyway. It's been a year. I've moved, new apartment, new job, new routines. I have a morning ritual now. I make coffee just for me and I write a single sentence in my journal. You woke up, that's all it says. Because that moment, that single breath after the anesthesia faded, changed everything. I woke up and my ring was gone. My husband was gone, but I was still here. And maybe, just maybe, that was the blessing I didn't see coming. Next one.